Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett. Just now back from day number 3 at 49ers training camp and practice number 2. It was a good one yesterday. The defense certainly won. Today, more of a mixed bag from both groupings, but I will say this, Brock Purdy had himself a day at training camp. Going to get into, again, Brock Purdy. ESPN predicted what his new contract extension could look like. We'll dive into that. We'll also talk about Nick Bosa, some young defensive backs still proving themselves on the gridiron, some dark horse candidates for a roster spot, some offensive line rotation stuff. Nick Sorensen talked today, and we'll get into literally everything that we saw on the practice field in regards to Niners training camp. Want to kindly ask you to like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, to leave a review, give us 5 stars. Tell us anything you want. Just give us 5 stars. Doesn't matter what it is. And without further ado, let's dive into training camp day number 3 because it was a good one. Some housekeeping, though. We had some absences on the day. We actually had one absence on the day. That is Trent Williams, who is still holding out, wanting a new contract. Basically, he wants a raise. There's no updates on him, just waiting to see when San Francisco and Trent Williams can come to an agreement. Brandon Aiyuk was there for the 3rd consecutive day. He is still not practicing as part of his hold in, but did watch practice with general manager John Lynch, and later finished watching practice with Talanoa Hufanga, who is still recovering from the torn ACL he suffered against the Buccaneers last season. No movement there from what we know in regards to getting an extension, but good to see him and John Lynch are talking, communicating, and it seems like the windows of conversation are open between Brandon Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers. A couple of players did not practice today, the main one being Isaac Guerendo, who, from what Kyle Shanahan said yesterday, hyperextended his hamstring. We didn't get any further notes or an update on him. Didn't practice today. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles has a lower body injury. He didn't practice as well. A wide receiver, Tay Martin, not sure why he didn't practice, but he didn't practice. And of course, Ricky Pearsall, who is on the NFI list because he hurt himself off or away from the practice facility, did some stretching and drills on the sideline, and he looks like he's on track to make his training camp debut next week. Want to say hi to Raphael 562 Niners in the YouTube chat. Says, "What's up, Sterling?" And everybody, what's going on, Raphael? Says like, share, and subscribe. Fluffy Ninja sends his hearts. I will say, Fluffy. And what's up to Yolanda? I'm sure she's watching as well. And if she's not, get her in there and make her watch. She wants to know what's happening out there at Levi's Stadium. But let's dive into actually what happened on the practice field. Yesterday and 2 days ago was press conferences and a mixture of practice notes and what did Trent Williams do? What did Aiyuk do? What did Brock Purdy say? Today is going to be straight to the point what happened at Niners practice. And to start, you have to start at the top with the man, the myth, the maybe eventual MVP, that is quarterback Brock Purdy. And I'll just say this, Brock Purdy was phenomenal today. When you talk about a quarterback controlling the offense, being poised, being again, in control of the offense, not wavering, that was Brock Purdy today. He was excellent for the Niners in practice number 2 of training camp, and the first time for fans to actually see him since the way last year ended. He was phenomenal. He was great. We're talking throwing the ball around left and right with anticipation and confidence, stepping up in the pocket, making throws on the run. Basically everything you've seen from Brock Purdy throughout the last few years was on display today. But it wasn't just, oh, he's great, oh, he's good. There does seem to be maybe some aura around Brock Purdy. We jokingly talk about him being a walking JCPenney's catalog because the way he dresses, but I'm not sure if it's because he's fully healthy for the first time and having a full off season in San Francisco. He's the bona fide quarterback number one. There is no quarterback controversy. It somehow feels like he's taken another step forward in the very short time we've seen him this year. Again, it's only 2 practices. It's a handful of OTA days and a handful of minicamp days and 2 training camp days. But from what we've seen from Brock Purdy, although it's very similar to what it was last year, there just seems to be something different. Yes, he's bulked up. Yes, he's bigger. Yes, he looks faster. Dare I say the ball is coming out quicker and stronger this year. So the arm strength, while there are reports he wasn't 100% until Thanksgiving last year, you can make an argument through 2 days that maybe the arm strength's even better than it was last year. Well, if you're looking for knocks on his game, although the deep ball wasn't one, people want to characterize him as a system quarterback that can't throw deep. Brock Purdy's looking to make people swallow their words if they do believe that still. And I always go back to when Shanahan drafted Trey Lance in his press conference before even picking him, or maybe it was directly after picking him. Shanahan said, when you look for a quarterback in this NFL, you're looking for a combination of Lamar Jackson and Drew Brees. And again, that was supposed to be Trey Lance, right? Well, that didn't happen. But I can say it really does feel like Kyle Shanahan may have found a more mobile version of Drew Brees in Brock Purdy. Now, will he win an MVP? Who knows? Super Bowl? Who knows? But I can tell you this, in year number 3, his first full offseason healthy, not recovering from the torn UCL, finally having his feet under him, not being a rookie a handful of years ago. For the first time, there is stability for Brock Purdy throughout the offseason coming into this year. There does seem to be something different, something better. And it feels like, well, last year he didn't win the MVP, nor will I say he will win this year. It certainly feels like things are building up to Brock Purdy, maybe not just getting a massive contract, but if he performs the way he did today during the regular season and throughout it, I can see ESPN's prediction of what his contract may look like, not just tying Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, actually surpassing and resetting the entire quarterback market. According to ESPN's Bill Barnwell, this morning, Brock Purdy's contract extension could be an estimated 5 years, $325 million, with $65 million on annual value. Now, Barnwell's projection is based off current quarterback market and the NFL salary cap growth. But would you feel comfortable paying Brock Purdy $65 million a year? Would you want to give him 5 years, $325 million? Essentially telling the NFL this is the new wave of quarterbacks. This is the next big thing. And it's hard to argue against it. The history's already there. Playoff wins galore. Was in the Super Bowl. Had he not got hurt against Philadelphia, maybe they wouldn't get, maybe they're in 2 Super Bowls. Who knows, right? He's only been great. He's never been terrible. And if he's bad for one game, the next game is an entirely different story, and he's back to his great winning ways. Bill Barnwell's projection, that's all it is, a projection of what could be, not what will be. Barnwell's projection to me is like, yes, this makes sense. It's where the market is. But when you watch Brock Purdy today, he had a handful of highlight throws. He had one to Braden Willis up the seam, which was good to see. Strike right to him. Bang. Big chunk yardage. Had a deep crosser to Danny Gray with anticipation and confidence. 2 massive throws. Big gains. 25 plus yards. We're talking shedding that system quarterback label many people still have on him. Now, obviously, time will tell. The season has to be played. But if everyone's talking about this is the last dance for this group. This is the last dance for players like Aiyuk and Deebo and Trent and Kittle. This is their swan song together, right? I always retort and say, or people also say the window's closing rapidly for the Niners. And I always say, look, I understand the thought process through that comment. The window's closing. Guys are getting older. Got to pay other players. You can't pay everybody, right? Well, my retort is always, you don't necessarily have to pay everybody. You just got to make sure you pay Brock Purdy. Because if Brock Purdy's who you think he is, that window is going to be open for, you hope, the majority of his next contract. You've been to one Super Bowl with him already. Maybe could have been in two. And you've only lost 2 playoff games. One of those was in overtime in the Super Bowl in which you had the lead multiple times. And the other one, he snapped his UCL in the first drive of the game. It's not as if Brock Purdy's done anything to warrant not deserving a 5-year, $325 million contract. Where, again, if you saw Brock Purdy today, maybe you are looking at him saying, wow, maybe this kid is Drew Brees 2.0. Maybe he is not just a franchise quarterback, but maybe he actually could be a top 5 quarterback. To some, he already is. To me, he's not. I have him top 8. But if you saw Brock Purdy today, man, your eyes would have been wide open because it was stellar. It was dart after dart after dart to not just open receivers. We're talking throwing guys open, anticipation, up the seam, towards the sidelines. You've seen Brock Purdy play great. You know what I'm talking about. But it was incredible today. I know we have Jim Everett, the Ramleys in the house here. I see you, Jim. I see you. And Jim, I want to say this. I am someone that humbly puts Matthew Stafford ahead of Brock Purdy in my quarterback rankings. The Brock Purdy I saw today, I might need to put him above Matthew Stafford in my quarterback rankings. Now it's practice. There's no pads. There's obviously context involved in this. A rotation of cornerbacks, this, that, and the other, not having Greenlaw. Curtis Robinson started linebacker today. There's obviously things to point out of, well, this was there and that was there to negate Brock Purdy's greatness. But that doesn't mean Brock Purdy wasn't really, really good today to a point of maybe he isn't top 8. Maybe he is top 5. If he can take this 2 days of practice and carry it over into the actual regular season and maybe the playoffs, we aren't talking about, mincing words of penny pinching. We're talking about how much money is Brock Purdy going to ask for and who is San Francisco going to have to cut to keep him. Now, again, it's practice. It's only day number 2. Day 3 of practice 2. But Brock Purdy, and I want to hammer this point home, was spectacular today. Moving away from the quarterback conversation for a very small second here, Chris McCaffrey came back to practice, didn't practice much yesterday, but did take part in team drills. But the major focus of the running back room with McCaffrey back and Grendo out was actually Jordan Mason. Now, I know many of you out there, including myself, want to see more of Jordan Mason. And when they drafted Isaac Grendo, the hopes of that kind of dwindled. That said, in, again, what is a very short period of time, through 2 days of practice at training camp, Jordan Mason has really stood out. Today more so than yesterday. And it's not just him as a player. It's the opportunities San Francisco is giving him. That was one of the issues we've talked about for Jordan Mason, was that why isn't he playing more? He has shown to be a closer. Christian McCaffrey called him Mariano Rivera last year. He's a closer. There's no reason why he shouldn't be getting snaps. And every time he does get snaps, whether it's against Seattle, whether it's against the Browns where he runs for a touchdown, there seems to be no reason as to why he shouldn't be getting 5, to 8 carries a game. He can bring value to your running game. And it felt like San Francisco, mainly Kyle Shanahan, was always reluctant to give him those opportunities. He was always a ground and pound. When the starter gets hurt, Mason might play. Well, Jordan Mason today looked really good at running the football, but actually was getting receiving opportunities out of the backfield. It could be nothing, but it might be an indication as to where Shanahan has his belief and trust in now with Mason. Could it be an opportunity for him to jump Elijah Mitchell on the depth chart? That's a tough ask, but Mitchell's hurt a lot. Could it be finally Jordan Mason's time to shine as the RB2 in San Francisco? Christian McCaffrey said in his post-practice press conference that he looks, speaking of Jordan Mason, way more complete than he ever has been. He's always been able to do it. It's just about being consistent with it. You see now he's making things happen in the passing game and the run game, and it's consistent. If the issue was consistency, I can argue it was actually opportunity. But Jordan Mason might be in line to become this team's RB2 if things continue as they did today. Moving on from out of the backfield to the receiver room, Danny Gray had another strong day. Kind of like Jordan Mason, feels like he's been featured more in the first 2 practices this year than he was all of training camp last season. And again, it's only 2 days, but again, if Danny Gray is that dark horse candidate to make the roster and push guys like Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell and Trent Taylor out of the room, it's great. This kid has talent still. And again, through 2 days, it does feel like that he's actually finally getting a chance to show his worth in a small sample size. But even in that small sample size, he got first-team snaps today. He replaced Brandon Aiyuk today as the ex-receiver. So maybe it's them rewarding him for a good day yesterday, but Danny Gray so far in 2 days of practice looks pretty good. Jacob Cowing, rookie out of Arizona. He looked fantastic today. Now, early in practice, muffed a punt. He got yelled at for that, as he should. And I'm someone that believes his way to a roster spot or getting playing time is through being a return man, whether it be punts or kicks. So catch the ball, please. But as a receiver, you talk about a kid that's got speed and burst and yak ability. All of that was on display today, countless times. And for a young receiver like himself, where Aiyuk's not playing because of the hold-in, Pearsall's injured, he's making the most of the reps he's getting. Once those guys come back, he may not play much. He may not get many reps. And through, again, 2 days, at least as of today, more importantly, making the most of those reps, showing the speed, showing what he can be in this offense. I think for a smaller player like himself, although very intelligent, has the ability to run through people. He has the speed. I think showing his strengths and getting those on display early are going to mean a lot for a young player like himself. You have to make the most of no Aiyuk and no Pearsall, and he's doing so far. Deebo Samuel, another great day. Obviously, we know Deebo Samuel is a great player. Former All-Pro. He's carried the offense countless times. He is the second most important player to this offense outside of Christian McCaffrey, right? Came into camp. We saw him yesterday for the first time in impeccable shape. The body looks right. He's lost some weight. Looks like he's gearing up for, again, a career season. And today just made guys look foolish. I mean, he and Brock Purdy are dialed in. Continues to show why he's just built different. There's no one like Deebo Samuel. Showed that today. There was a play where he and Rock Ya-Sin were kind of fighting for the ball, and Deebo Samuel essentially said, I'm Deebo Samuel for a reason, and tossed that sucker aside. And it was like, oh my God, Deebo, you are a dangerous, dangerous man. And not a good look for Rock Ya-Sin, but Deebo Samuel in day number 2 of practice already kind of showing his will or announcing himself to a player trying to make the roster. So really strong days from Danny Gray. Jacob Cowling flourished today, and Deebo Samuel still doing Deebo Samuel type things. Let's move to the offensive line, because the offensive line rotation continues. John Feliciano and Jake Brendel were rotating at center, which again, like yesterday, goes back to my bold prediction of Feliciano is going to start at center come week 1. Now, I'm not sure if it's a health issue for Brendel or they just want to continue to get Feliciano snaps, because currently he is this team's backup center. But I also know that Nick Zakel and Ben Barch are getting reps with the third and second teams. That said, it's not just Feliciano getting snaps with the second team or mixing in here or there. He's getting legitimate first-string reps at center. And it could be a Jake Brendel knee arthritis issue. We don't know exactly. We know he's 100% clear, but is he 100% healthy? Who knows? But this is second straight day that there could be a competition brewing for the center position. And because of that, Spencer Burford continues to get almost all of these starting right guard reps, which again is what I said for the bold predictions, that we are going to have these competitions. We are going to see Jake Brendel maybe lose his job at center. Now, I'm not rooting for that. Jake Brendel's is second team Pro Bowler or an alternate a couple years ago. Maybe it was second team All Pro, whatever he was. He's a veteran center. You rarely ever do you want to change centers. Kyle Shanahan doesn't feel like that kind of guy. He wants a vet in that room. Now, Feliciano fits that mold, but ultimately kind of makes your room weaker in regards to depth if you do that. But it does feel like Kyle Shanahan's trying to get the most out of Feliciano, out of Brendel, and Burford. I mean, Jarrett Kingston's getting tackle reps, which didn't really feel like a tackle, but he was getting right tackle reps today. Not with the first team, mind you, but still. And there hasn't been much to say about Dominic Pooney. I am someone, and to clarify this, with no pads, and you really can't tackle the quarterback or make tackles at all, I am making no assumptions or taking away judgment from the offensive lines or defensive lines. It is so hard to do so. Obviously, you can do some, and we'll do here in a little bit with Nick Bosa and Gross-Matos, but offensive line, when you can't touch anybody, when you don't have pads on, and you're not allowed to get physical, I can't grade you, nor can anybody else. Anyone telling you that, oh, this offensive line was great and this guy wasn't good, no. It's super, super hard. The pads have to come on, and even then, it's really a preseason game that does it for you, for someone on the outside looking in like we all are, right? And even being there, it's hard. Sometimes you aren't focused on each play. All you see is the result, not how it happened, right? So just some small stuff. Feliciano, Brendel at center with the first team. Burford still at right guard. We'll see. But competition feels like it's brewing at the center and guard positions. Moving to the other side of the trenches, and let's talk about Nick Bosa, because it is Nick Bosa's world, and we are just living in it. I know last year, for the Niner fans, for the faithful, and Nick Bosa himself, probably wasn't his best. He wasn't bad by any means. He was still great, but we've known Nick Bosa to be a defensive player of the year. Last year wasn't up to that standard, right? This year, mainly today, you want to talk about a man that has the offensive line wrapped around his finger. He was making Jalen Moore and Colton McKivitz look like scrubs. There's always, when a defensive player, mainly an edge rusher, gets to go against the backup tackles, he's licking his chops. It's his sole purpose is to make them look like scrubs, to make them look like backups, to go, you're putting this guy on me? Nick Bosa had his way multiple times with Jalen Moore and even starting right tackle Colton McKivitz. And there was a couple times it was against George Kittle. Like Nick Bosa was just on another level. Brock Purdy playing at a high level, Nick Bosa playing at a high level today on the defensive line. I don't think there was a play where he wasn't either in the backfield getting a pressure or getting a sack. I mean, you want to talk about him playing back up to his potential. I mean, Nick Bosa looked darn good today. Next to him, though, was a new signee, Gross-Matos, former Carolina Panther last year, and they brought him in to kind of be the Charles Omenihu of this iteration of our defensive line in San Francisco. And yesterday, it wasn't an amazing day, but almost had a sack, if you want to call would-be sacks. But today, much better. He stuffed some runs. He was getting pressure. He and Fred Warner combined for a massive play to kind of, there's like a little toss left to Jordan Mason. He blew that up. Also had a would-be sack today. Would have been a second of the training camp practices so far. So good signs from a player that was misused in Carolina. They really didn't know what to do with him. They changed regimes a handful of times with him there. You're hoping they can kind of dial him into what he's actually going to be doing and utilize him correctly. And you're hoping, well, you're not hoping this, but you're hoping you can get the same production from a player like Gross-Matos, like Charles Omenihu. You're just hoping they don't leave for a big contract and go to Kansas City in the offseason. But a good day for Yetur Gross-Matos, a good sign. And I truly believe that this edge group is very thin, right? It's Bosa, it's Floyd, it's Gross-Matos, it's Beal Jr., and basically Austin Bryant and Robert, and Drake Jackson, right? There isn't much depth there. So they're relying on a player like Gross-Matos to carry that second unit. Now, you would like to think that that second unit would be Gross-Matos and Jackson, while your third unit is, Austin Bryant and Beal Jr. and others, right? That said, there's a lot of pressure on players like Gross-Matos, Drake Jackson, whoever's going to be in that second unit to anchor down because there's not much depth there. Now, if Gross-Matos plays great, you have some more depth. You have a potential, rotation piece, maybe a spot starter here or there that can produce for you. But if they play down and Drake Jackson becomes a big turd like he has been the past 2 years, and Beal Jr., who I do like a lot, although I think he's much more of a spot, you have to pick your spots with him as a speed rusher. This offense or this defensive line could be in some danger of needing to find somebody else. But that's why you have $32 million in cap space in case you got to find somebody else to trade for during the season or before the season starts. But I'm someone that believes that I like Floyd. Obviously love Bosa, but you need guys like Gross-Matos to step up. Not just want. Again, you need them to step things up during the offseason. But a good day from him. Moving from the defensive line to the secondary, wasn't much to discuss about linebackers today. Curtis Robinson's getting first team reps. I wouldn't look into that too much. But the secondary, much bigger story. Darrell Luter Jr., a player that we've discussed a handful of times. Going back to last year, San Francisco seemingly has high hopes for him to maybe be a starter. I know last year, had he had the actual offseason program, I think they would have wanted to see what he can do out there. This year, getting the opportunity with the second and third teams, mainly second team, I believe, from what I could make of today. But in his second day out there on the field, had a really nice interception, went up and got it, wrestled the ball away from Juwan Jennings, who was targeted by Joshua Dobbs. So that's what you're hearing correctly. That's 2 consecutive days of underthrown interceptions by Josh Dobbs. Not a great look, but when there's bad from a quarterback in practice, there is good for a defense. Yesterday was Malik Mustafa, who benefited from Josh Dobbs' underthrows. Today it was Darrell Luter Jr., who goes up and gets it and wrestles away from Juwan Jennings. And yes, Bobo, I am saying Nick Bosa is earning his money. Yes, I am. He was really good today. Darrell Luter Jr. in a room that's really crowded for having the lack of depth at edge rusher. San Francisco has a ton of depth at cornerback. Again, Mooney Ward, Lenore, Yadam, Bernardo Green, Darrell Luter Jr., Samuel Womack, Ambry Thomas, Chase Lucas, Rock Ya-Sin. There's 7 to 9 guys in that group that realistically could have a roster spot. Obviously, I have my choices who I want to win jobs, who I think will win jobs. But Darrell Luter Jr., a good sign today to get an interception. Nick Sorensen, he was a big ball meeting guy. Big meeting guy about getting turnovers, forcing takeaways. And for two young secondary pieces on back-to-back days, you get turnovers and takeaways. I have to believe that that's going to kind of sit well in the mind of new defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen. Moving down the line again, back to quarterbacks, because again, Josh Dobbs threw 2 picks in 2 days. It's not great. Meanwhile, Brandon Allen, while not performing like Brock Purdy has been, which was near MVP-like in practice today, looks good. He looks sharp. I think this was his best day of practice throughout minicamp and OTAs and training camp. Josh Dobbs has looked relatively bad. He's looked pretty bad. If you were to have a leaderboard set up, Brandon Allen would be the quarterback number 2 today. But he was good today. He was sharp. He wasn't throwing interceptions like Joshua Dobbs has. Wasn't underthrowing balls consistently like Josh Dobbs has, but has been, while not great, has been more of a steady Eddie compared to Joshua Dobbs, who has been Mr. Inconsistent. So make of that what you will, but it's what's happening. I don't love that. I'd rather Joshua Dobbs be quarterback 2 and him play well, but you have to go with the hot hand as your quarterback 2. That's been Brandon Allen so far. Moving back to the secondary for a second, because we have some safety news to discuss. Jair Brown and George Odom were taking first-team reps today, which makes sense. Hufanga's not practicing, and you want to make sure players like Mustafa, Taylor Hawkins, and others in that group, get their feet wet, whether it's coming back from injury or being a rookie. You want to make sure that they have a full grasp of the defense first before facing players like Kittle and McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, right? So Brown and Odom took first-team reps today. We'll see if that continues tomorrow. But like I said earlier, Darrell Luter Jr. was good today, gets an interception. Malik Mustafa today, who had a pick yesterday, almost had his second interception of the day or of training camp today while covering a player on a Brandon Allen broken play. It broke down. Allen kind of threw it up. He got pressured. It was like, what's going on here? He threw it away. But Mustafa almost had his second pick of training camp so far. Great stuff to see. Again, Nick Sorensen is the ball guy, right? He is someone that praises and wants takeovers and turnovers. Darrell Luter Jr. and Mustafa almost had his second one of the day. And arguably, if you want to get into the weeds here, almost had his third takeaway. Interception yesterday and was in on a forced fumble and recovery yesterday as well. So Mustafa making a really good early impression. And these things go a long way, but Malik Mustafa today was the first player on the field. He was the first player out there. That stuff matters. Not to everybody, but to me. Is it meaningless on a random Thursday afternoon? Sure. But when I see a young rookie, mid-round pick like Malik Mustafa in a room where there is a job up for grabs, he needs to prove himself. He needs to show the Niners brass, the coaching staff, that, hey, I mean business. Being the first person out there means a lot. You want to know why? Because to me, that mirrors what Talanoa Hufanga did. Now, Hufanga didn't play much in his first year. Was a special teamer who didn't make an impact until the Green Bay Packers game in the snow at Lambeau Field, right? But It's stuff like that, being there to practice early, being the first person out there, setting a tone, then on the field, getting takeaways, getting turnovers, being around the football consistently. It's almost like Malik Mustafa is mimicking exactly what Hufanga did in his first few years to make an impression on not just the fan base, but the coaching staff. The Niners let go of Jaquiski Tartt for right reasons, but because Hufanga made such an impression on them, they trusted him. They believed in him. Now, being there early and being terrible in practice won't cut it, obviously. But it's when you can match being there early in practice, setting a tone, then crushing it in camp and at practice, which Mustafa has done through 2 days. That's what changes a coach's mindset. That's what makes them think, hey, this kid may be on to something. And that's what could be the difference maker for Malik Mustafa. That Hufanga may not be healthy come week number 1. This is a job up for the grabs. You have to do everything in your might to make an impression. He's doing so far. And that brings us to our final practice takeaway of the day. Jake Moody continues to make me eat my words through 2 practices, and I love it. I love being wrong when I'm negative. When I'm predicting bad things, I love being wrong. Yesterday, 4 for 4, 51-yard field goal. Today, also 4 for 4. He's perfect. He's 8 for 8 through 2 days. Great stuff from Jake Moody. Love to see it. Honestly, it feels weird saying this. If we can just get a consistent kicker and the right guard, we may win a Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot has to go right, but man, if you would have made the PAT in the Super Bowl and it wasn't blocked, maybe we win that game. Who knows, right? Who knows? If you make a few field goals in the playoffs, maybe we're not biting our nails and clenching our teeth, hoping and praying the football gods rain down on us to win a football game and have the Packers miss a field goal, right? So Jake Moody so far, 100%. Keep it up. Love to see it. We have some questions in the YouTube chat. Actually, a comment by Bobo, who is always here. We love you, Bobo. Trent Williams or Brandon Aiyuk, one of them has got to go. No. No, neither one of them has to go. In fact, they'll both get paid. Although San Francisco is much, much more open to trading Brandon Aiyuk than Trent Williams, but both will get paid. I think it's only a matter of time before both those deals get done. Williams has all the leverage in negotiations with San Francisco. Meanwhile, the Niners have all the leverage with Brandon Aiyuk. So we're just counting down the days now. Both those deals will get done. Unless something crazy happens, then we're having a whole different conversation of, oh my goodness, the house is on fire. No one go in there, right? But everything's going to be okay. In fact, I had a friend text me today, and I think this is where a lot of fans are at. I work at 95.7 The Game, and one of my friends there, coworker, said, is any other team dealing with this contract crap as much as the Niners? Freaking Trent now? And I said, CeeDee Lamb's holding out. Don't worry in Dallas. Tua's holding in with the Dolphins. It's happening everywhere. Don't worry. They're going to have to pay Trent. They're going to pay Aiyuk. And I think this next text is where maybe you're at, where I've kind of been for a little bit of time, but I know a lot of fans are here. Not stressed at all, just annoyed. It's getting greedy, and as a fan, I just want to watch some football and stop talking about money. And I agree. It's annoying. It's very frustrating. All that to say, while it may not be that big of a deal, next year you got to pay Brock Purdy, you got to pay Mooney Ward, you got to pay Lenore, you got to pay Hufanga, you got to pay Dre Greenlaw, Aaron Banks. It's not going to get any easier because you make it through paying Williams and Aiyuk, and it might get muddier over the next few weeks. But as a fan base, I think whether you're on radio, whether you're in TV, whether you're an analyst on YouTube, whether you do what I do, whether you do what you do, whatever, I think you're just saying, can we please just play football? I'm so tired of the money conversation. It's been filling my inbox for months. I'm tired of it. But how about a better conversation? Again, we have Bobo here saying, do you believe 100% Kyle Shanahan will eventually deliver us a Super Bowl after 30 years and 3 straight Super Bowl losses? I don't know, man. Well, I don't know either. But I do think that, look, getting to a Super Bowl is hard in itself. Harbaugh, great coach. It takes a lot to get there, but you have to have everything go right. And I think the issue for the Niners is they've had, in 2019, everything go right. Right? They went 13-3. Everyone stayed relatively healthy that year. There wasn't too many catastrophic injuries that season. You were young. You had a star quarterback, at least that you thought, and your defense was great. You had a second overall pick. Nick Bosa was there. Felt like a new dynasty was being built. Everything goes right. You beat the Packers by a lot of points handily. You didn't even need the quarterback. You beat the Vikings at home, and you get to Kansas City, and you had them beat. And it was like, man. This past year, everything goes right until the playoffs, where effort's not there. You're not running the football well. You're not defending the run well, but you get lucky. And you get lucky against the Packers, who are going to be good again this year, and I think are going to be good for a long time now. Jordan Love and LaFleur out there with the weapons they have. And the Lions, who I don't know how long they're going to be good, but they're here, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. They're here until Jared Goff falls apart, and they got to rebuild that thing with a young quarterback, right? You got lucky. I know it was a great way to win last year. Ladybug catch, a Lions comeback was historical. Took a lot of luck to win those games. And you get into the Super Bowl, and admittedly, you weren't supposed to be there, and you haven't beat again. And, you can credit the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo all you want, and they should, and you should. They deserve all the credit in the world. It just feels like that the moment, well, it's not too big for Kyle, that there are still times where his brain kind of locks up, or when the opposition makes a change, whether it's defensively or offensively, mainly defensively with Spagnuolo in Kansas City, that it's not, he doesn't see the whole picture. That part of his brain gets a little clouded. And it's easy to say that for us. We're watching a game on TV, we're in the stands, we're analyzing from our Monday morning quarterback spot, right? And it's all hindsight's 2020. But I don't think it's a coincidence. Like Andy Reid was, that's why it's the big comparison. Do you want to fire Kyle Shanahan in 3 or 4 years when you lose another one, or you never get back to one, or and be on the receiving end of watching him win 3 or 4 elsewhere, like the Eagles are with Andy Reid? To be fair, Philadelphia has won one since Andy Reid left, but there's that risk of, do you want to be competitive for 10 years and give yourself a chance every single year to be good, potentially win the whole darn thing, or would you want to restart, rebuild, and hope you find greener pastures on the other side? It ain't always greener. It was a Jim Tom Sula and a Chip Kelly dry basin for 2 years in San Francisco, and it took Kyle essentially 2 years to build it back up. And it was fast. It's only a 4-year difference. But I think Kyle Shanahan, in the middle of training camp or day 2 of training camp or whatever it is now, day 3 of training camp, practice number 2, I think Kyle Shanahan can win a Super Bowl. I think Kyle Shanahan will eventually win a Super Bowl, whether it's with Brock Purdy at quarterback, Deebo Samuel at receiver, Christian McCaffrey at running back. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do think if the Niners can hold on and Jed York could not get impatient, eventually that bow breaks and you walk over into the promised land. I grew up in private school my entire life, right? I know the story of Moses in the desert and the Israelites walking for 40 years in the desert and they can't find the promised land. Eventually, it took a change, whether it's that quarterback or the leader of the Israelites. They had to make a change and they got over the hump, right? That said, that change I don't think is Kyle Shanahan needing to go anywhere. I think Kyle Shanahan is more than equipped to win a Super Bowl. I think Kyle Shanahan has been walking in that desert for 40 years. Maybe it's 30. Maybe he has to walk 10 more. All I know is he's 20 years into his coaching career. Maybe he has to wait the actual 40 years to get in. And it's not a metaphor or an example of what could be coming. But I think Kyle Shanahan, you ask anybody, at least a top 5 coach, arguably top 2 coach in football right now. For as great as Mike Tomlin is, the Pittsburgh Steelers would fire Mike Tomlin for Kyle Shanahan. And take Mike Tomlin, for example. Mike Tomlin's a great head coach. I love and respect the heck out of Mike Tomlin. My friend's a Steeler fan. I don't know how the heck they haven't had a losing season. Great coach out there. He's only won one Super Bowl. And it was like 15 years ago now, or whatever it was. A long time ago. But he's still there. Want to know why? They're competitive every single year. I think the low end of Kyle Shanahan is a Mike Tomlin-like 10-year run where they never have a losing season. But the plus or the upside is you get an Andy Reid where, oh my goodness, you have a dynasty on your hands where you have the 1980s Niners all over again. Now, will it happen? It's really tough to say. Tom Brady wasn't supposed to happen. Mahomes wasn't supposed to be the next coming of Mahomes. He's one of one, I guess. And Brock Purdy wasn't supposed to happen either. So it's the NFL. It's sports. That said, I think Kyle Shanahan 100% will win a Super Bowl. And I do believe, whether it's this year or next year in 20 years, it will be with the San Francisco 49ers. But it's day number 3 of training camp, Bobo. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I will say this, though, to give you a little tease of what's coming up in the next month or so. There's that little gap in between the preseason and the regular season. In that little gap, you are going to get my 2024 season predictions for each division, the playoffs, the Super Bowl winner. And let me tell you, you are not going to want to miss that. But that wraps up our coverage for day number 3 in practice number 2 of Niners training camp. It was a good day for the offense. Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel were this, in tune magic. Nick Bosa was just wreaking havoc on the offense. Young defensive backs are shining, and we hope it's the start of another great run to the playoffs. But I kindly ask you, just as you did yesterday, and hopefully you'll do right now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcasting platforms. If you're on the podcasting platforms, leave us a 5-star review. Say anything you want. Doesn't matter. Tell us what you think training camp, your biggest takeaway has been so far. What do you think of the episode you're currently listening or watching? Give us 5 stars, and I appreciate it so much. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell notification because we are going to be live tomorrow reacting to day number 4 in practice number 3 of San Francisco 49ers training camp. If you kindly would follow us on social media as training camp is progressing, that's where you can find every single update. The Twitter is 49ers_access. The Instagram is 49ers.access. And if you would like to see your Niners play live and in person, whether it's against the Jets in week 1, a middle of the season game in Timbuktu, it does not matter. If you want to be in Buffalo and Green Bay in the middle of the winter watching your Niners play, use our promo code 49ers access. It's 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Again, like, share, subscribe, leave that review. And as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. My name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, stay faithful.